A small alley is called Silom Alley, Windy Alley, but no one knows which direction the wind blows from, because no one has ever stood and talked long enough to feel it. The houses are lined up close together, as if intentionally trying to be intimate. Yet every door is tightly shut, as if afraid that the word hello might slip through. Taidy. This alley is so quiet. Each morning in Silom Alley is filled with sounds that never greet each other. One house plays music so loud that the cutlery rattles. The next house has roosters that crow before dawn. Another house has an old woman who complains about everything, from the scorching sun to the clouds drifting too slowly. All the sounds are happening at once, but none of them are truly listening to each other. Taidy. So many sounds, but no one is talking. Taidy, an 8-year-old girl, walks through this alley every morning with a slice of toast. She looks up at the closed window and murmurs to herself, "Why do people who live so close feel so far away?" Because no one starts first. Taidy's mother smiles faintly as she ties her daughter's shoelaces. The answer is so short, but it lingers in the little girl's mind all day. That night, Taidy lies thinking about the words "start first" longer than any other night, until she falls asleep. And, unbeknownst to anyone, a small intention begins to sprout in her heart. The next morning, Taidy left home earlier than usual. She took a deep breath, stood at attention like a little soldier, and shouted a greeting at the top of her lungs. "Good morning!" The sound was perhaps too loud, or maybe a little too loud for the guise of the people on this street. The shout made the bag of bread in her hand flutter, and the bread rolled to a stop in front of the neighbor's house. Before long, a dog of unknown breed ran over and happily started eating it. Taidy said, "Oh, never mind, the dog must be hungry." Taidy watched and smiled, because for her, even small mistakes could always be a kind gesture. Taidy waved to every house. Although no one waved back, something had quietly changed. Some of the window curtains rustled. A faint laugh echoed from behind a door. Taidy continued on without regret, because she knew that starting first didn't necessarily require an immediate response. Taidy murmurs, "At least I started." After that morning, Taidy began to become a familiar sight in Soy Silom. She didn't hold a sign, didn't set rules, and didn't expect thanks. She simply walked past each house with a smile, still unfamiliar with the concept of calculating the pros and cons. One morning, she helped the aunt behind the house carry a bucket of water. "It's not heavy at all, dear. I'm heavier than the water," Taidy replied. The aunt burst into laughter. That laughter was loud enough to warm the long, silent alley a little. Another day, Taidy sat listening to her neighbor tell the same story for the 4th time. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush him, and didn't leave. "You're a good storyteller, Uncle. Listening to you is like watching a movie where I know the ending, but I still want to watch it again." The uncle was silent for a moment before smiling shyly. It was the smile of someone who never thought anyone would still want to hear their story. But Taidy's kindness didn't comfort everyone. Some houses still kept their doors closed. Some still looked with suspicion. Some eyes filled with questions. There were faint whispers. Is this child too nosy? Doing so much good, they'll probably expect something in return. Taidy heard them, but didn't understand them all. That night, Taidy quietly asked her mother, "Why don't people believe that kindness is free?" Her mother thought for a moment before answering, "Because many adults have paid a high price for kindness." Taidy lay looking at the ceiling, and for the first time, she realized that kindness didn't make everyone smile, but it made some feel insecure about their past. The house stood right in the middle of the alley. It was as if it were placed there as a dividing line no one dared cross. The adults in the alley had long whispered that the owner disliked everyone, didn't participate, didn't voice their opinion, and had never attended a single alley meeting. That kind of person is only interested in themselves, someone said. Taidy heard it. She didn't argue, but she silently remembered the words. One day, Taidy walked to the door and gently knocked. A voice from inside answered immediately, flat, cold, and like a sentence repeated countless times. "Don't pretend to be nice to me. Your kindness has a price. I don't want to be indebted to anyone." The word price puzzled Taidy. "I'm not selling," she answered simply. "I just want to give." The door didn't open. There was no reply. But this silence was different. Taidy placed the snacks in front of the house as usual, but this time she added softly, "If you don't want to be related, we can just be neighbors." That night, the adults in the alley argued again. "Don't get involved. He's not cooperating with anyone. Those who don't take sides are more dangerous than those who do." Taidy listened silently. She didn't understand every word, but she knew that this wasn't about snacks anymore, and it wasn't a childish matter anymore. That year's rainy season came early and harder than usual. A water pipe in Soy Siloam burst, flooding many houses at once. Buckets floated, shoes swept away, and the sound of the rain drowned out everything. At first, everyone helped, scooping water, moving belongings, shouting instructions to each other. But soon, the sounds of help turned into blame. "Your house is at the beginning of the alley. You're responsible." "Why me? My house is also damaged." The voices grew louder and louder until they drowned out the children's voices, until no one was listening to anyone else. Taidy stood in the middle of the alley, soaked, and saw something clearly. It wasn't the floodwater, but the words flowing faster than reason. At the height of the argument, the door of the house in the middle of the street swung open. A man emerged. He spoke nothing. He didn't look at anyone. He put down his tools. He bent down to repair the pipe. His hands moved skillfully, quickly and silently. A faint murmur was heard. He used to work for the city's systems, but he quit. Taidy looked up. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone you could do it?" The man replied without looking down, "Because when I told you, no one listened." The water began to recede. The arguing quieted down, but some questions lingered in the air. All this time, they simply didn't listen to anyone, or perhaps they simply didn't want to listen. After the incident, everyone gathered in front of the house. Their clothes were still damp, but the sound of the rain had stopped. Someone spoke up. "If Uncle had helped from the beginning, everything wouldn't have been this chaotic." The sentence floated in the middle of the group. No one immediately responded, but many nodded slightly. The man chuckled softly, not because it was funny, but because he had heard the sentence before. "When I warned about the pipes, no one listened because it didn't please the majority." The entire street fell silent. He continued slowly. "I used to believe that if you spoke nicely, people would listen. But in the end, the one who spoke the loudest wasn't necessarily the one telling the truth." Many of the adults avoided eye contact. Some looked down at the ground, as if they had just heard something that they already knew but didn't want to accept. Taidy asked softly but clearly, "Then why did you still come out to help?" The man paused for a moment before answering in a calm voice, "Because if I didn't help, the ones who would suffer the most are those who haven't made any choices at all." The girl thought slowly and began to understand that not speaking, not listening, and letting things slide all had equally significant consequences. And sometimes the truth didn't lose because it was wrong, but because no one wanted to listen. After that day, the Siloam Alley began holding serious meetings. Arguments arose, factions were formed, and hand counting was used. Some won by sheer numbers, others lost despite having strong reasons. Voices overlapped, reasons were decided by sheer volume, and the word "we" began to have increasingly clear boundaries.
Taidy listened until she couldn't take it anymore. Why do we have to win if we all still have to live in the same alley? Some of the adults chuckled softly, not because it was amusing, but because they were used to it. "You're too young, you don't understand." That answer ended the conversation faster than any vote. The man looked at Taidy and spoke for her in a soft but clear voice. "The child understands. He's just never been taught to surrender to indifference." That night, someone knocked on the door of the house in the middle of the alley, not for help, but to apologize. The alley didn't immediately become quiet. Differences still lingered, old wounds remained. But for the first time, the Siloam Alley began to be honest with itself. Time passed. Soy Siloam didn't become the dream street it once was. There were still issues with the repair budget, the noise, and who should always take responsibility first. But what changed was, when problems arose, no one rushed to point fingers. There were real arguments, heated debates, but no one walked away. Neighbor A: "We need to discuss the repair budget again." Neighbor B: "You can argue, but please stay and listen until the end." One day, a local reporter asked Taidy directly, "How do you think this street is governed?" Taidy: "By remembering each other." Reporter: "Remembering what?" The girl paused longer than usual before answering firmly, "Remembering who helped, who made mistakes, and who is still here." That answer wasn't beautiful, but it was true. The man added in a calm voice, as if speaking to everyone and to himself, "Living together isn't about agreeing on everything, but about not forgetting that the person in front of you is a human being like us." The news that day didn't make the street famous, but it changed it forever. Taidy walked home, looking at each door that was still different. She thought to herself, if every house is different, but they can still listen to music together, that should be enough. And in this small street, kindness gradually transformed neighbors into close relatives throughout the neighborhood. Compassion is not weakness, but the courage not to use hatred as the rule of coexistence. When we see our neighbors as family, the majority voice will not swallow the vulnerable voice. And when compassion is chosen instead of fear, then an ordinary street will become a place where people don't abandon each other. Because if there is compassion, there will be family and friends throughout the neighborhood.